Okay. What's going on, everybody? Thank y'all for tuning in. Um, First off, I do want to apologize. Last week we did have a video on that uploaded. Well, we thought had uploaded, but didn't quite upload. Um, and so we've been taking some time to try to work over the kinks of getting y'all the the messages in a timely fashion, and hopefully, starting this week, we won't have any more problems, and we'll be a little bit more on schedule. Once again, I'd like to thank everybody in the group Desire to Inspire. We over 3,000 strong, so um, hats off to everybody, man, in the group. Um, Thanks to everybody who's followed along Facebook. I'd like to thank everybody for all the birthday wishes, all the birthday love from everywhere. I appreciate it. Um, 32 don't look like 32, but it sure feel like 32. But I'm cool with it. Thank everybody on Instagram, new followers on Instagram, new subscribers on YouTube. Thank y'all. Um, and everybody who's just been, people have reached out and been encouraging. I'd like to thank you all. And please just continue to pray for me, pray for my strength. Um, Pray that I remain or continue to remain open to God's direction. Um, sometimes God doesn't speak to us as much as we would like to, and I think it's at those times that we really have to rely on what we know about God, um, our foundation, our belief system, our value system, um, to continue to to direct us. Today, I don't know if you all know, but I am a student at the Kingdom Life Bible Institute. Um, this is my first semester, and our professor, Pastor Carr, he kind of brought up something that had me thinking, and I just want to talk to you all briefly about it today for the midnight message. Um, if I had to give it a title, I guess I would entitle it "Trusted with Trouble." Trusted with trouble. Um, it's kind of interesting to me how people sometimes define their um, blessings. Um, when good things happen to us, when we have ideal situations or ideal circumstances, or an increase in finances, maybe an increase in status, a promotion, or whatnot, we automatically attribute it to being blessed. And when things go the opposite way, many times I see people, including myself, sort of attributed to not being blessed. And sometimes we even look at our external condition as a reflection of how blessed we are, and I think that is can it can be a little bit of a mistake. Um, and like I said, I do it at times also. Um, but nevertheless, it's very interesting just to see people's different values or beliefs on what being blessed is. One of my, I won't say my favorite, but one of, to me in my life, the most applicable scriptures that I know is Paul, is written by Paul in Philippians, where he says, and I'm paraphrasing it, but he begins at verse 11, chapter 4, verse 11, where he says, I've learned to be a base, and I've learned to abound. I know how to suffer need, and I know what it is not, to need. And then he concludes in verse 13, where he says that I can do all things through Christ which strengtheneth me. And that passage has always spoken to me um, in my life because as me, like I'm kind of like Paul, and that I know what it is to be up, and I know what it is to be down. I know what it is to be blessed and feel blessed, but I know what it is to not feel so blessed, and I know what it is to need something. I know what it is not to need anything. And what I have learned, as Paul did, is that when I have Christ and my relationship with Christ, no matter where I'm at in that spectrum, I'm fine. I can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth me. But as we talked in class earlier, Pastor Carr, he was saying, how a lot of if you ask people who was um, the most oppressed, or the most burdened, or the most uh, grieved, for lack of a better word, person in the Bible, many people would agree that it was Job. Paul suffered, even Christ suffered, but um, I, I think Job has a unique suffering in that he suffered so much for so long. Um, I believe that there is a unique lesson in losing everything, and I am um, I'll be honest with you. We talk about asking God to use us and to lead us, as He sees fit. But I know I'm not sure how um, forthright I will be willing to have um, a Job experience. Um, I couldn't imagine losing what he lost. I couldn't imagine going through what he went through, and I couldn't imagine what that did to his psyche, what that did to his faith, what that did to his entire belief system, and so as we begin to talk about that in class today, my professor pointed out a couple of things that I kind of want to share with you all and expound on, because at the end of the day, what we see in Job, before we even get into the scripture text, but what we see in the story of Job is a person who was selected for this trouble. He was selected for this trouble. Um, like I said, in this day and time where you know many of us um, we seek out blessings, and it's nothing wrong to be blessed, man. It's nothing wrong with wanting more, with wanting to live abundantly, but um, I believe that there is a certain faith um, that comes with being selected for trouble, and understanding the sovereignty of God, that He is in control, um, that He is, the ultimate um, orchestrator. It's His plan that's going to prevail, and so that when we understand the sovereignty of God, and we begin to see and recognize trouble, then we can begin to understand that if the trouble is there, then it must play some role in God's plan. See, a lot of people's not comfortable with that. I don't even know if I'm all the way comfortable with that, but I cannot attribute anything to be outside of the power of God's sovereignty, simply because if I were to do that, then I could not hold God to be sovereign, as I truly believe. And so I think that the challenge becomes for many of us, can we trust the sovereignty of God even during trying times? It's easy to believe in God when things are going good. It's easy to stand on your faith when things are going the way that you want them to go, and people are doing what you need them to do, when the bills are getting paid on time, and you ain't got to worry about transportation or getting back and forth to work, no health issues, no problem with your kids. See, it's easy to kind of say I'm trusting, I'm leaning on God in these times, but when things tend to go bad, when things tend to go awry, and I don't know about you, but sometimes that thing can have a domino effect where one thing goes bad, and then when you look up and there's another thing that goes bad, and then you look up and there's another thing that goes bad. Then you begin to really question some things. You begin to question yourself. You begin to question your faith. You begin to question even God's power and His sovereignty, because in our minds, in our human minds, we think that good is supposed to get good and bad is supposed to get bad, and when I'm blessed, I'm supposed to get blessings, and if I'm not getting blessed, then I must not be blessed, and so if I'm not getting the blessings, then maybe I'm getting cursed, and all of these questions tend to go through our minds through our human perspectives, but we have to go back in Isaiah 55:8-9, understanding that God's ways are higher than our ways, and His thoughts are higher than our thoughts, and as the heavens are over the earth, that's how much higher His ways are higher than our ways. And so at some point we have to trust and believe that His plan is going to prevail. Proverbs 19:21, that His plan, even though the man has their own plans and we have our own ideas and we have our own things that we want to make happen, is ultimately God's counsel that's going to prevail. We must understand and trust that He's sovereign even through our troubling times. If we could only believe through trouble, if we could only believe through pain, if we could only believe through trials, if we could only believe through loss, if we could only believe through adverse circumstances, if we could only believe through abuse, if we could only, how would the world be different if believers could believe through heartache and through heartbreak and through emotional breakdown, if we could only believe through the attack of the enemy? I want to go to Job real quick because there's a couple things I just want to bring out, and then I'm out of here. I ain't even took off my coat. I just walked in the house. I want to go to Job chapter 1. And we're going to start at verse 6. And it says, "Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them. And the Lord said unto Satan, Whence comest thou? Then Satan answered the Lord and said, From going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it. And the Lord said unto Satan, Hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and upright man, one that feareth God and escheweth evil? Then Satan answered the Lord and said, Doth Job fear God for naught? Hast not thou made an hedge about him, and about his house, and about all that he hath on every side? Thou hast blessed the work of his hands, and his substance is increased in the land. But put forth thine hand now, and touch all that he hath, and he will curse thee to thy face." Real quick, I think the first thing that I hadn't, and I've read this story before, actually rather recently, but talking with Pastor Carr in class, a couple of things kind of came out that I hadn't seen before. I think the first thing that jumps out is back at verse 6. It says, "Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them." Remember, we were talking about the sovereignty. We were talking about the sovereignty of God. God's sovereignty. He's all powerful. Where the Word of God says that the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also among them. So even the enemy has to come check in. Even the enemy has to come and present himself. There's nothing that he can do. Yes, the devil comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And he's pretty good at his job, but even he has to come and bow down. Every knee shall bow. Every tongue shall confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, that God is sovereign. Jesus is Lord to the glory of God the Father. And so when we understand that, then we understand the power chain. We understand the pecking order in this thing. I think sometimes we give a little bit too much credit to the enemy. He got to check in. But the thing is this: if the enemy got to check in with all his power, then what do you think we got to do? If the sons of God got to come and check in with God, if the enemy has to come and check in with God, then why is it that we won't check in, or we think that we don't have to check in with God? Why do we have to be reminded to check in? Why do we have to be reminded to get in this word and to not forsake the fellowship? Why do we have to be reminded to have a prayer life? When you understand that everybody has to check in, then you gotta have some sort of relationship where you can check in. If you haven't opened up the lines of communication, now how is it that you can check in? Let's get off that. Second thing, I want to go to verse 8. It says, and the Lord said unto Satan, hast thou considered my servant Job? For the longest time, I don't know, in my mind, I thought that the enemy had went to God, that Satan had went to God, to sort of have a duel. And Job was sort of the he was the one that the enemy would try to use to challenge God. And it wasn't until today talking to class that I realized that it wasn't the enemy that went to God. It was God that went to the enemy. It wasn't a case where the enemy was coming to God and saying, you know what, God, I want to show you something. You think you got to believe it. You think you got to follow it. You think you got a son, but, let me show you what his true colors are. Let me show you how he really is. Let me expose his true motives. But it was actually the other way around. God says, hast thou considered my servant Job? What would happen if God had to come to the enemy and use you to prove him wrong? What if we were the ones that God was using to show the enemy exactly who he was, to put him in his place? God, it wasn't a challenge from the enemy to God. It was a challenge from God to the enemy. Let me show you what I got going on. Let me show you somebody who really loves me. Let me show you somebody who's really faithful to me. Let me show you somebody who, if I allow you to sit back and to take from and to destroy from and to mess with, even through everything that you can do to him, he's still gonna love me. He's still gonna trust me. He's still gonna believe in me. Have you considered my servant? Have you considered my servant Silas? Have you considered my servant Joe? Have you considered my servant Michael? Have you considered my servant Lisa? Has he put your name right there? Have you considered my servant you? What if God was trying to use you to prove to the enemy who he is? What if God was considering you? You got to understand, though, this wasn't consideration for a new car. This wasn't consideration for a new job or a promotion. This wasn't a consideration for what many of us would call a blessing. This was a consideration for trouble. Have you considered my servant for trouble? It wasn't Job's good time loyalty that would cause this consideration. It was Job's all-time faithfulness that would qualify him to be able to go through this trouble. What has God considered you for? Have you considered that God was considering you for? We have a natural fight or flight response. And before you run away from this trouble, before you run away from your next trouble, before you run away from your next trial, before you go to God and ask Him to remove the mountain, have you considered that you may be becoming considered for this trouble? Have you considered that it was God allowing this to happen to use you to show your enemies your faithfulness? Have you considered that you may be being considered? And so when I understand that, there's a special trust, um, there's a special trust that must be foundational in this relationship, because it's one thing for you to be able to trust me, Father, when things are good, but when you can trust me when things are bad, that means you can trust me at all times. Can God trust you? Can He trust you with trouble? Can He trust you with trials? When negative situations come your way, can He trust that you'll still stand on His word? When unideal situations come into your life, can He trust that you'll still spread the gospel, that you'll still remain faithful, that you'll still get on your knees and pray, that you'll still believe that He is Lord to the glory of God the Father? Can He trust you with trouble? Because if He can't trust you with trouble, then He probably can't trust you at all. He probably can't trust you at all. The last thing I want to bring out in this at verse 10. So we start out, let's go back. We understand that everybody has to present themselves before God in verse 6. Then we get to verse 8, and we understand that Job was one who was considered not as a test from the enemy, but as a trophy from God. And then we get to verse 10 and we see why. Well, let's start at verse 9. Then Satan answered the Lord and said, Does Job fear God for naught? Does Job fear God for nothing? Is he not fearing God for nothing? This is what Satan says. Has not thou made an hedge about him, and about his house, and about all that he hath on every side? If you don't leave with anything, I need you to understand this. Because God is sovereign. Oh my goodness. Because God is sovereign, because God is all seeing and all knowing and all powerful, and because you as a child of God, hopefully you are a child of God, but because you as a child of God are indeed His child to the sovereign God, the same God that everybody has to come in and check in with, the same God that the enemy has to come and get clearance with. You got to understand that even though Job was about to be tested, he still had to get clearance from God. Why did he have to get clearance from God? Verse 10 says that Job had a hedge around him, he had a hedge around his family, and he had a hedge around his house. Understand this, that no matter what it is that you're going through, well, no matter what it is that you're dealing with, you are connected to a sovereign God who has a hedge around you. Anything that comes in to steal from you, to kill you, to destroy you, anything that comes to break you down, anything that comes as trouble, as trials or tribulation, first has to come through the hedge. And if God doesn't lift up the hedge, then they can't get through. And so if it got through, it's because God lifted up the hedge, and He lifted up the hedge for His glory. He lifted up the hedge for His praise. He lifted up the hedge to show the enemy that it was never about the enemy. It was always about the hedge. It was always about what He had around you. It was always about, oh my goodness, surely goodness and mercy will follow you all the days of your life, because there is a hedge around you. And any trials and tribulations or trouble first got to get through the hedge. And so the next time you see something troubling, the next time you see something difficult, next time a mountain tries to come and get in your way, understand that the hedge had to be let up just for the mountain to get there. And so if the mountain is there, it's a purpose in the mountain. Go back to your sovereign Father. Go back to your power source. Go back to the one who lifted up the hedge and say, Lord, what is this hedge for? Because guess what? You can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth you. So no matter what comes your way, no matter what obstacles come your way, no matter what tribulations come your way, they had to make it through the hedge. And so if they made it through the hedge, it wasn't to kill you. It wasn't to take you out. It was to make you stronger. And here comes the best part of the story. The best part of the story is that after the trouble got through the heads, and after he went through the trouble, he got double for his trouble. And so if we ever want to get to the double, if we ever want to get to the increase, we got to understand that it's the heads that you got through the heads. And if it got through the heads, then there's something I got to go through. It's something I got to deal with. But I don't have to sit in it. I don't have to stew in it. I don't have to remain in it. I have to understand that I get through it to get my double for my trouble. Listen, I love y'all. I got to get out of here. I love y'all. Thank y'all. I'll catch y'all next week.